In the eyes of outsiders, they say Samuel's family is probably in a difficult situation this time. Not to mention other things, just look at his eldest son. Originally, they were counting on him to come back from across the ocean and reclaim the family fortune. However, things took a turn for the worse, and he is lying in the hospital, his life hanging in the balance. It's a pity for Justin, the chairman, especially his only daughter, who is being forced into an arranged marriage in the 21st century. It's absurd, simply absurd. But Cherry's father, Justin, is still alive. He say, as long as Justin is around, this favor must be repaid. Even if I'm not here, my children will continue to repay it. So, the great responsibility descended upon Cherry. Moreover, this marriage has been decided since you were in your mother's womb. You can't go back on your father's word. Where can I put my old face? But, there's no but. Justin raised his hand from the sofa, standing up. The child is lying in the hospital bed, and as the prospective father-in-law, I can't turn a blind eye. Mark the date, the 6th of next month, be well prepared. Is he really her biological father? How can he be so heartless as to marry her to a dying man? Be prepared? Is he asking her to prepare her emotions to become a widow? Cherry was on the verge of tears, her small face wrinkled as if she was about to kneel down to her father. Why kneel? Are you going to worship me? With Justin's shout, not only did Cherry tremble, but even the cat on the side was startled and disappeared with a meow. After all, she is his only daughter. Justin sighed in relief, eased his tone, and began to take an emotional approach. I and your Uncle Samuel have been good friends for decades. Now that he's in trouble, how can I not help? Think about it, if it weren't for Uncle Samuel, you, your mother, and even your father and I, could we live so comfortably? These words are true. Despite Justin always wearing a fierce expression and exuding a domineering aura, he is, in fact, an uneducated rough man who didn't finish junior high school. Many years ago, before Cherry came into the picture, Justin went to the big city with her mother, Lily, to make a living. In the same train compartment, they met Uncle Samuel. In stark contrast to Justin, Uncle Samuel was a cultured man, wearing glasses and shining leather shoes. The train was crowded, and there were quite a few petty thieves eyeing Uncle Samuel. However, he was gentle and eloquent, reasoning with people. Those petty thieves didn't acknowledge their mistakes and, tired of listening, resorted to violence. Justin, who was a few steps away, couldn't stand it. He stood up from his seat, pushed through the crowd, and slapped them left and right. Justin, with years of physical labor, had a solid muscular body. When he stepped forward, he blocked the view of many people behind him. Brothers who traveled from different parts of the country, it's not easy to sit on a train together. You steal from me, and I steal from you. Is this how we embarrass our parents? Justin's voice, honed through arguing and fighting, silenced the entire train compartment. The petty thieves were stunned for a moment, and one of them, realizing the situation, grabbed a bottle nearby. Justin, quick-witted, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it, and the bottle hit him hard on the head. Seeing such a formidable leader, other men joined in, and women began to voice their complaints, scolding the thieves. The petty thieves, feeling uneasy, wanted to escape but were caught red-handed by the police called by the train staff. Later, Justin found out that Uncle Samuel had the money he invested in business on him. The train quickly departed, and apart from the shared surname and appearance, no one knew more about each other. Later, Justin was bullied at work, couldn't get his wages, and, in disappointment, decided to return to his hometown with Lily to continue farming. Unexpectedly, he met Uncle Samuel again. Your Uncle Samuel is a cultured and good person. He not only helped me retrieve the money but also helped me get rich. Cherry has heard this story countless times since she can remember. Justin, her father, is particularly talkative at home, often reminiscing about the past and praising Uncle Samuel as a great person and brother who repays kindness. Children inevitably have hero fantasies, especially when the hero is the one who turned their family wealthy. Before middle school, Cherry used to listen with enthusiasm and applause, but as she grew older, she began to feel that her father was exaggerating and making up stories. Of course, this is mainly because she has hardly ever seen that so-called great person, Uncle Samuel. Except, when you were born, Uncle Samuel even held you. Especially Oliver, he said you were so cute, he really liked you. From her father's words, Cherry did get a glimpse of that family. It is said that on that day, with Oliver expressing his liking, Cherry became his arranged fiancé. Knowing the truth, tears rolled down Cherry's cheeks. This was too casual. She truly met Oliver's family in the hospital. At that time, Cherry didn't know about this arrangement. Oliver, who had just returned from abroad, hadn't been with his family for long when they were involved in a high-speed rear-end collision. Justin said he was taking her to see an old friend. Cherry followed her father into the intensive care unit. The person on the bed had tubes all over, and she couldn't see the person's face clearly as she approached. "Cherry, go and call someone." Cherry was about to get closer when her father grabbed her. With a dignified smile, Cherry called Uncle Samuel and Aunt Ava. Little did she know that this call would trigger emotions. Uncle Samuel almost tremblingly responded, and to Cherry's surprise, Aunt Ava tightly held her wrist, tears streaming down. "Good child, thank you, thank you." Cherry didn't expect that, just coming to visit, with flowers and fruits paid for by her father, Aunt Ava would be so grateful. She wanted to laugh it off and say no need to be polite, but considering the special circumstances, she managed to free one hand and patted Aunt Ava's shoulder, comforting her, "It will get better." Leaving the hospital room, Justin told her about the arranged marriage, and Cherry almost tumbled down the stairs. "What? Engaged?" Justin drove, and Cherry sat in the back, tears streaming. The one who needed comfort the most was herself, an innocent girl who had never been in a relationship, about to marry a complete stranger, and potentially someone with a disability. With only 14 days left until the wedding, Cherry's despair grew day by day. Her father was unyielding in his decision, and to make matters worse, her mother, her own mother, unexpectedly went on an overseas trip the day before her father took her to the hospital. "Oh, Mom, you should have taken me with you," Cherry wailed in a video call, crying pitifully. However, Lily, her mother, said, "Cherry, your father owes a debt of gratitude to someone. He has spoken, and he must fulfill his promise, right? But I'm your only daughter. Can you just stand by and watch me marry a dying man?" Lily narrowed her eyes. "Nonsense. Oliver still has a 50% chance of recovery." Cherry remained silent. Since Justin became the chairman, her mother, Lily, became a full-time housewife, playing mahjong and doing facials every day, occasionally strolling in nearby cities. Unexpectedly, she was now even traveling abroad. Lily turned the camera, revealing two young foreign guys, saying they were the landlord's sons and her language teachers. She asked Cherry if her arranged fiancé Oliver was handsome. How inappropriate. Cherry shook her head with a cool heart, waved a small hand, and said goodbye. Meeting Oliver's parents again was not as calm as before. Thinking about her future situation, Cherry felt the urge to kneel down and beg for mercy. As someone who had never won a card game, how could she bring happiness to him? Uncle Samuel took out a certificate from somewhere, saying it was for the new house prepared for the two kids. Cherry almost fell off her chair, wide-eyed in disbelief. A new house? Aunt Ava misunderstood again, holding Cherry's hand and gently stroking the back, saying kindly, "Yes, although our family is currently, sigh." She sighed deeply, a shadow passing through her eyes and then fading away, "But we can't make you suffer. You are your parents' precious daughter and also Samuel's and my." Well, wait. Cherry feared she would continue and immediately interrupted, You see, my mom is still abroad, so..." Cherry intended to use her mother far away as an excuse to delay things, but Ava interrupted, "Your mom, a kind person all her life, heard about Oliver's situation and is also extremely worried." Well, in their whole family, Cherry was probably the least kind. During the meal, the three adults happily discussed everything related to the wedding, from venue decoration to invitation design. Justin even started to prepare a speech for the bride's family. Cherry had no sense of participation in her own wedding preparations. She poked at the food with her chopsticks, as if trying to poke a hole in the floor beneath the plate, hoping to hide and avoid everyone. With 10 days left until the wedding, Justin suggested that since she had no interest in the pre-wedding preparations, she should spend more time visiting the hospital. It would be beneficial for Oliver's condition. Cherry, in a daze, thought, well, this person, his name sounds quite nice. Better than those strong inlays that leave too much to the imagination. Uncle Samuel used to work in real estate, and because of this, the family moved from Tongcheng after Cherry was born. Oliver went abroad for further studies and never came back. So, it wasn't strange that Cherry hadn't met him. Later, Uncle Samuel fell victim to a betrayal by a trusted subordinate, losing both business partners and facing several lawsuits. He had to sell his properties and return to Tongcheng, re-establishing contact with Justin. Initially, with Uncle Samuel's help, Justin ventured into the food business. With some savings, he also started a clothing business. Later on, due to Lily's deep obsession with hot pot, Justin opened a chain of hot pot restaurants. Comparing her parents' love story with her own melodramatic arranged marriage, Cherry couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness. Looking at her parents' love and then at her own forced marriage, she wondered how the world was regressing. Influenced by her father, Cherry chose a major in food inspection for university. When her father asked, "How is this major?" Cherry gave a word answer, "Unpopular." In truth, Cherry couldn't really say whether she liked it or not. She grew up in comfort, and her parents spoiled her, buying her whatever she wanted. This upbringing fostered a content and easygoing personality in her. She felt that everything was acceptable, and as long as she was happy, it was fine. After graduating, Cherry took on the role of a cashier at her family's hot pot restaurant. One day, just after hanging up a call from Justin urging her to go to the hospital, a friendly waitress stuck her head out from the side. "Cherry, I heard you're getting married?" Cherry was startled and looked around before pulling the waitress into a corner. "How did you know?" "Who told you?" "The chairman did. Everyone knows. He even mentioned that the entire staff will have a day off on the wedding day, the whole restaurant, all the branches." The waitress was ecstatic, her eyes shining with excitement. Cherry's face suddenly turned unpleasant, and her heart felt heavy. She took out her phone to call her father, but it was still on a call. Trying the restaurant's landline, it was also in use. Cherry's shoulders slumped, realizing that thanks to her father, probably half of Tongqing knew about it. Cherry, the beloved daughter of the hot pot king, was going to marry a seemingly useless person. She understood that soon everyone, whether familiar or not, would come to join the excitement, curious to see what this unlucky guy was like. Tongqing TV station initiated a missing person advertisement, and soon, the streets and alleys were plastered with missing person notices. The copy read, "Cherry, your dad Justin is calling you to come home and get married." Yes, there are only 8 days left until the wedding, and Cherry has run away from home. She, a new-age woman with independent thinking, well-versed in Marxist theory and philosophy, absolutely cannot compromise with the decadent customs of the old society. Cherry hides in an inconspicuous dessert shop, wearing a mask and a large hat, looking at the poster with 3 huge exclamation marks in shock. Looking at the quality of the poster, her dad must have spent a lot of money. Sitting at the table behind her was a couple who suddenly started talking about this. The man said, "This dad is not good. Isn't he pushing his daughter into the fire pit?" Cherry vigorously nodded in agreement. Looking at them, both being men, there was a difference. "Justin is not good." The woman said, "What's the big deal? Even though Samuel got tricked by someone, his body is still intact, just an empty shell. There's still some meat inside and outside the wall." Cherry pouted, her dad also has money. She doesn't care about Samuel's family's money. The man continued, "This is not right. What's more important than the happiness of one's children? Knowing that the person won't survive and still forcing his daughter to marry, isn't this committing a sin?" The woman got angry, slammed the table, "You know nothing." Cherry, bothered by the argument, left the dessert shop amid their heated discussion. She went to the hospital, still fully armed. Samuel's family was in dire straits, but Oliver was still in a large VIP room. As Cherry exited the elevator and walked towards the door, she thought to herself, "This guy really can't manage anything. His parents are worried to the point of turning white-haired for his wedding, and he's still sleeping soundly without a care in the world." But then, she remembered she was indirectly causing trouble. Cherry felt a bit guilty, especially as she pushed the door open and lifted her head. Cherry was startled and almost screamed in reflex. The person, who just a few days ago was filled with tubes and wearing an oxygen mask, was now looking at her with open eyes. Cherry felt her soul leaving her body. She stared blankly at him, and the air became silent yet restless. Cherry tentatively took a breath, blinked her eyes, and asked, "You, alive?" No response. "Oliver?" Still no response. Cherry felt puzzled, thinking she might have seen it wrong. She approached a bit, and he did have his eyes open, but they were lifeless and empty. Could he have become a vegetable? Cherry took off her hat and mask, walking closer. She tried calling him again. Still no response. Oh no, maybe this cure rate is just half the truth. Thinking that he was her future husband, Cherry decided to run. But then, something more terrifying happened. Someone grabbed her arm. Cherry screamed and tried to break free but failed. "Water, water." A hoarse and dry voice, contrasting with her piercing scream, and to her surprise, Cherry could hear it. She turned around, and from the hand holding her, her gaze went up, arm, shoulder, all the way to the mouth. He was speaking. Cherry, despite the shock, was proud she could hear it. She raised a cup and fed Oliver water. Cherry collected the cup, poked him with her finger. You? Oliver blinked, and there was a hint of vitality, fitting for someone who had just awakened from a long sleep. Cherry cautiously took a breath and blinked her eyes, asking, "Do you know who I am?" He opened his mouth but couldn't make a sound. Cherry smirked, showing her disdain. "Didn't expect that, right? You, in your current state, lying there as a disabled person, still have an active and lively fiancé like me." Cherry didn't realize it herself, but she had already accepted this identity. "Of course, you should thank my dad and your dad, taking advantage of my inability to speak and make decisions, and unilaterally deciding all this. But, it's also because you have good taste. You found me cute and beautiful at first sight. Ah, who can blame you? This lady is naturally beautiful." After indulging in some self-praise and expressing her misfortune at having to marry Oliver, Cherry suddenly felt a surge of frustration. She forcefully slapped the edge of the bed, exclaiming, "I haven't even dated anyone. Do you know? Do you think lying here unable to move is a burden for you? I'm the one suffering. I'm young, beautiful, and with long legs. Why am I forced into marriage like this?" Cherry didn't keep track of how long she had been complaining. Once she had vented enough, she earnestly scrutinized Oliver from head to toe. She didn't have a good sense of male height and weight, but she knew he was tall, not too thin or too fat. The oversized hospital gown didn't look bad on him even while lying down. Most importantly, despite the pale and sickly complexion, she had to admit he was exceptionally good-looking. High and straight nose, slender eyes, even his eyelashes made her, a girl, feel inadequate. Glancing down, she noticed the dry, colorless stains on his chapped lips. The sunlight from outside cast a bright glare, making her feel a bit dazed. He was looking at her. Although his eyes lacked vitality, Cherry's face gradually heated up. She suddenly stood up, saying, "Even if I've never seen someone as handsome as you, and even if you don't like me, I can still marry you. My dad said feelings can be cultivated, and over time, love can grow. It's not a big deal." Cherry, who was initially lively, sighed and her complexion changed. "But you're a useless person, no matter how handsome you are." Sigh. Cherry straightened his collar and neatly folded his hands on his chest, then armed herself and left the room. At the information desk on the first floor, she told someone who looked like a head nurse, "The patient in room 906 seems to have awakened." Samuel's eldest son woke up, creating another sensation in half of Tongcheng after the missing person incident. Some felt relieved that he had been saved, while others expressed sympathy for the unfortunate soul from Justin's family. Cherry leaned against the window on the second floor of her home, wondering if her determination had somehow miraculously awakened Oliver. She quickly shook off such thoughts. With only 3 days left until the wedding, a frightening yet reachable number, Cherry went straight home after returning from the hospital. Justin saw her with teary eyes and expressed his joy at her return, saying, "It's good that you're back." Cherry thought he was going to say something like, "Dad won't force you anymore," but instead, he said, "Samuel and Ava have everything prepared. We're just waiting for you." Oh, so it wasn't tears of joy for her return after all. Although Cherry had compromised 50% when leaving the dessert shop, thinking, "Fine, I'll get married," even if Oliver had bad luck, she was still young, and she could remarry. It would only be the label of a divorced woman, and her father's favor had been returned. She wouldn't lose much, what's the big deal? However, now, looking at her father's joyful face, Cherry couldn't force a smile. Oliver's recovery progress exceeded Cherry's imagination. 2 days before the wedding, he could already walk, and he had walked to Cherry's house. Cherry opened the door, utterly astonished. You, Cherry, long time no see. What a joke. They had just seen each other in the hospital. Without thinking about these, Cherry surprisingly found Oliver's voice to be incredibly pleasant. So, Cherry was confused and said, long time no see. Oliver covered his mouth, laughing, "Won't you invite me in?" Well, as her nominal fiancé, it was reasonable for him to come in, right? Then, you. Before she could finish, Oliver had already entered and skillfully changed his shoes. After he sat down, Cherry brought a cup of tea over, looking at him suspiciously. "Are you human?" Oliver almost choked, adjusted his tone, and said, "What do you think I am? A monster?" Cherry awkwardly scratched her arm. "Aren't you, almost like a... Oh, I heard someone talking to me while I was sleeping, saying I had a lively and beautiful fiancé. They even said if I didn't wake up, she might run away. So, here I am." Before he could finish, Cherry turned and walked to the kitchen. I'll get you an apple. Oh God, this was too embarrassing. Her shameless boasting and extreme self-love were heard by him? After sorting out her mood and coming out, she didn't see him. Had he disappeared? Just as she was thinking, she heard the sound of the door opening. Cherry turned around and saw him coming out from the bathroom. I came here today. He looked at the apple in her hand, without peeling. The nutrition of the apple is in the skin. Don't you know? She hadn't peeled an apple for herself, why would she do it for him? What was this guy so particular about? Oliver smiled, took the apple but didn't eat it, holding it in his hand. I came here to ask you if you want to marry me. If someone had asked this before, Cherry would have said that everything was settled, both families were ready, and she could only wait obediently. But now, this man stood in front of her, full of life, solemnly seeking her opinion. What if I say no? No one can force you. You're a person with hands, feet, and thoughts. No one can stop you. Oliver gave her time to consider, leaving his number and saying she could call him anytime. With Justin away and Lily not yet back, Cherry was left alone in her spacious room, feeling bored and frustrated. She woke up in the middle of the night from a terrifying dream, gasping for breath. It was 2:30 a.m. In her dream, married life was not going well. After marrying Oliver, he let her be a widow, enjoying life outside while she became an old lady who couldn't control her husband and couldn't beat the other woman. Too scary, absolutely terrifying. Cherry found Oliver's number and called him, disregarding the time, whether he was sleeping or not. Hello? Oliver. Yeah. Oliver recognized her voice and responded. Do you want to marry me? Not for any ridiculous auspicious reasons, not to obey the elders, and certainly not to save face in front of others. Cherry knew that at this point, no matter which side regretted, rumors would spread. But she still wanted to hear what he thought. There was a rustling sound from the other end, followed by the friction of slippers against the floor. After a while, he spoke. He said, I've liked you since I was 5. What? 5 years old, isn't that? What do you think it is? I thought it was just instinct. What instinct? The instinct of one child toward another. Just like how she would praise and say nice things when she saw cute children now. I love you, it's instinct. Huh? Cherry thought he was contradicting himself. The instinct of one man toward another woman. Oliver hadn't intended to say these things to her now. In her eyes, he was just a man she had recently met. Even if they had a so-called agreement from their childhood, it was unfair to her without memories of it. That day at the hospital, when she talked about developing feelings over time, it gave him confidence. Coming to her house suddenly was just to confirm whether her feelings toward him were generosity toward a vegetable or genuine affection for a normal person. Cherry didn't expect a sudden confession and was silent for a while before finding her voice. How do you know you love me? She didn't understand him, and she didn't believe him. Cherry, I will slowly tell you in the future. Cherry didn't say anything. Oliver thought she had fallen asleep. Just as he was about to say goodnight, he heard her ask, will you find another woman in the future? Oliver paused for a moment, then chuckled, no, my family is bankrupt, and I can't afford it. Cherry seemed satisfied, still pondering the previous question, why do you say you love me? Why indeed? Oliver didn't know. He always remembered that little girl, wrinkled face shortly after birth. At first, he despised her, but when she opened her eyes and unconsciously grinned at him, he softened. Her eyes were pure and bright, like lakes and oceans in travel brochures. So, when adults half-jokingly said he liked her, he said it. Unfortunately, they didn't become childhood sweethearts. Oliver moved with his family, and for many years, he only saw her twice. Once when he was 18, about to go abroad, he secretly visited after finding her address from his mother. She got off the school bus, smiling and saying goodbye to her classmates. Oliver wasn't sure if she was the one until he heard the teacher in front calling her name. Cherry, don't forget to do your homework. She immediately became angry, shaking her stubborn little braid, I won't forget. The second time was when she was 18, and he returned from abroad. He waited with a group of anxious parents under the scorching sun. She ran out, waving to the crowd, Mom, I graduated. She had cut her hair short at that time, with a strand curling beside her ear, shining in the sunlight. Her eyes sparkled. Oliver staged a play for others. He indeed had a car accident, but it wasn't as serious as it seemed. To make the enemy relax their guard, he set a trap, aiming to find evidence and reclaim what was rightfully his. Of course, Cherry was also part of his plan. He initially thought that his affection for the little sister who had just left was just an instinctive reaction. But when he hid in the corner of the hot pot restaurant, watching her busy with cashier and serving dishes, he suddenly felt that he had lost those moments of her time. And when he listened to her childish complaints, he felt that this living person was so close. When she approached, he could hear the longing of every cell for her. On the wedding day, Cherry waited nervously in the room. She was so anxious that she almost scratched her palms. Oliver somehow sneaked in, leaned against the wall, and looked at her with a half-smile. Cherry's gaze fell on his deep eyes as she lifted her head. What's wrong? Nothing, just worried that you might be nervous. Came to check on you. Cherry blushed and retorted, you talk as if you're not nervous at all. No, I'm even more nervous. Cherry was about to mock him when she heard him say, I'm more nervous than when that person with a hat and mask came to spy on me. I don't know if that person poisoned the water I drank, but I felt like there was a love potion. I kept thinking that the person's figure was good-looking. Unfortunately, I wasn't clear-headed at the time and didn't see it clearly. What a pity. He shook his head with a sigh and walked away, leaving behind a blushing Cherry. This guy. Cherry angrily put down her clenched fist but felt a sweet sensation in her heart. Wait, what was she going to say? Right, she wanted to tell him that since she had decided to develop feelings for him over time, he shouldn't think about other crooked-necked trees. She only said this to him after the elaborate wedding was over. At that moment, Oliver was intoxicated, his head feeling heavy. Someone had to escort him back to the room. Yes, it was Samuel, or rather, her father-in-law's suite. Oliver took off his coat and tie, collapsing on the sofa. Cherry had changed clothes and taken a shower, wearing casual home clothes. She came out of the room, throwing a pillow and a thin blanket onto his face. Getting drunk on the first day, you're sentenced to sleep on the sofa. Turning around to walk to the door, Cherry was suddenly hugged from behind and spun around. What are you doing? Let go. Cherry tried to break free but found that a person who had drunk alcohol was surprisingly strong. She was held tightly, and the warm breath near her ear made her itch. The two extremes made her both cry and laugh. Oliver, let go, you're so dirty. Let go. Oliver put her down but didn't release his grip. His chin pressed against her shoulder. What did you just call me? Oliver? Cherry didn't react immediately. Aren't you called Oliver? What, do you want to be called second dog? Oliver chuckled, a deep, throaty sound mixed with alcohol, sounding somewhat sexy. As long as you like it, second dog or third dog is fine. Cherry also laughed. She had seen Justin drunk before, acting like a child running to her mother and presenting treasures. At that time, she felt that her father seemed like a problem child. Now that it happened to her, she found it quite amusing. In a playful mood, she rubbed his furry head and asked, second dog, call out once and let me hear. Oliver seemed to be contemplating. He nudged her neck and said, woof. Call again? Woof. Cherry couldn't help but burst into laughter, thinking, men are truly unpredictable creatures. You call once. Cherry refused, I'm not a second dog. Oliver moved away from her a bit, facing her directly. He used 2 fingers to lift her chin, making her meet his gaze. You're not a second dog, you're my wife. Call once, let me hear. Cherry instantly understood. Although this man was reeking of alcohol, his eyes were clear. It wasn't the appearance of a drunk person. She realized she had fallen into a trap, tried to break free, but he tightened his arms, bringing her even closer. Call or not? Cherry pursed her lips, clenched her teeth. She definitely wouldn't, especially in this embarrassing situation of being held by him. Call or not, he asked again. Cherry, His had a rising tone, combined with his voice and the atmosphere at that moment, Cherry's heart started pounding. He slowly approached. Cherry was alarmed, about to refuse, when their lips accidentally met. A kiss that happened inexplicably? Cherry was still pondering what was going on when his nimble tongue had already entered. Don't move. As if punishing her, he used his teeth to lightly graze her lips. In the entangled breaths, Cherry felt like her body was no longer under her control, completely led by him. You need to taste a bit of bitterness for being so stubborn. When he finally released her, Oliver explained with a smile. Cherry heard people say that honeymoon leave was only 7 days. Oliver, being the boss, claimed to take as many days as he wanted. So, the two went on a honeymoon for half a month. Upon their return, Oliver never seemed to go to work. Cherry asked, Oliver, don't you need to go to the office? He replied, I have a secretary. Oliver, don't you need to take care of business matters? I have a secretary. Oliver, don't you have to meet with business partners and sign contracts? I have a secretary. Having a secretary is impressive? Having a secretary is indeed impressive. Then introduce your secretary to me. I want an all-in-one secretary too. My secretary is not all-powerful. Huh? He laughed but answered, having a husband is all-powerful. Tell me, what do you need? On call, can't hit back, can't argue back, willing to work hard, filial piety 24/7. Cherry calculated in her mind and, opening her mouth, said loudly, call me mom.